I'm Faye Wett, and let's queer up lesbian and queer women. International Rebel Dykes Day launches to honor outsider lesbian culture. A new global observance celebrating outsider lesbian culture is launching this month. The first International Rebel Dykes Day will take place on the 29th of January, honoring the legacy of Rebel Dykes, a trans-inclusive, sex-positive lesbian activist community that emerged in the 1980s in London. The movement traces its roots to the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp and became known for its anti-capitalist politics, gender non-conforming style, and direct action, including protests against Section 28. Rebel Dykes were also closely tied to the legendary fetish club night chain reaction, which opened on January 29th, 1987. Rebel Dykes documentary producer Siobhan Fahey says, quote, "It's very hard to pin it down. It's words like punks, activists, and outsiders, the dyke within the straight world," end quote. Fahey said, "The day is meant for those who feel excluded by mainstream ideas of queerness." Quote, "A lot of us just don't fit in. We don't fit into that queer stereotype. So I would call on women who feel like outsiders in whatever way they want to be to have this day," end quote. Since the documentary's release, exhibitions, archive events, and club nights have emerged across the UK, and I am loving it. You know, from my seat, outsider lesbian culture has always been kind of like the heartbeat of our community as lesbian. Loud, messy, political, and gloriously unbothered. You can't bother me. I'm a lesbian. Rebel Dykes didn't ask for permission. They just kind of took up space no matter what. Celebrating them isn't nostalgia. It's a reminder that visibility was built by women who refused to be polite about their existence. And we should celebrate them, and we should have more documentaries like this. We were just talking about a documentary about
Queens.
About Queens. And it's like, every single documentary needs to be to be made of our community, of our history, of our queer history, because we all need to see where we came from. You know, women are the first marginalized community. Literally. Okay? Adam and Eve, that's how it was. First, you're marginalized, you're a girl, that's it. You know, so to have these folks kind of standing up for a group of people that were marginalized and maybe left unseen to many, inspires me here in 2026.
You know what it reminds me of just a little bit is that back in the, back in the 80s when they had ACT UP, right? So we had these outsiders within the gay community that were very much rebels. And so a lot of us in the community were so fearful. We were quiet. We were silent. We were fearful for being targeted. We were fearful for having our insurance taken away, our jobs taken away, our families excluding us. And so a lot of us were silent. And the ACT UP group stood up and they rebelled against the queer norm, and they said, we're not going to tolerate this. And so they made a front. And I see a little bit of similarity with the group Rebel Dykes, because they mentioned the outsiders didn't really fit into typical queer culture. So I think it's just a beautiful concept, because so many of us, for different reasons, gender, expression, identity, maybe we don't typically fit into the stereotypes. And so I think it's a very interesting part of our culture and our history, and I love it.
It sounds like an exciting event. It should be a lot of fun. It does. I mean, it makes me want to go. I mean, just the way, everything's going on.
Yeah.
A little bit of rebel in heart.
You could. Well, you are a rebel. And I make you a rebel dyke. There. You can only have that happen from one to another that way, But I mean, that's, you mentioned ACT UP, right? And I love the inclusivity of this, right? Here in the United States, where I am constantly screaming that trans women are women, period, right? And then you see a group like this that is like, yes, we have gender non-conforming, we have trans people, and that's it. We're just all dykes. That's a beautiful thing. That's how we should be. Period. And that also brings me to thinking about the AIDS crisis, right? We've had this conversation, you and me, Kevin, about when the lesbians were the ones that were at the bedside of the gay men.
They sure were.
Right? Because, during that time, for whatever reason, men were less passable. Okay. And a woman lesbian passed in society as just being a housewife or just being a woman that worked outside of the house, It was never labeled as a lesbian or a dyke. So they were able to move around freely, get the paperwork done that the men needed to get their health care, So stories like this could never be forgotten, ever. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.